Welcome to the Warren Cycling Podcast. My name is Dean Warren. I'm in Sarasota, Florida today.
And I'm Randy Warren, and I'm in Asheville, North Carolina.
Yeah, and you just got back from Virginia, right? You were doing a gravel race. I don't know, is there still more gravel racing that I see going on in Arkansas? It seems like they're the hotbed of off-road cycling now in the United States. But yeah, you were in Virginia, and you kind of looking forward to next year to do more gravel racing. So want to hear about it.
Yeah, the Appalachian Mountaineer course. It was the longest distance was 85 miles with 75. Actually, almost on my Garmin, it was almost 8,000 feet of climbing.
Wow.
So that seemed like a good race to go to. There was one in Georgia too that was a lot flatter, and so I thought I'll go do the mountain course.
Is it a course that was loops, or was it one big 85-mile route? I mean, how are gravel races? Are they generally more like
Yeah.
even Bells or Waffle? They're all just one big loop, right? You don't really do laps anywhere, do you?
Sometimes the Belgian Waffle Ride, North Carolina, we did 2 laps of DuPont Forest. So it was a pretty big, loop that we did there, probably 15-mile loop. And this one here did kind of a figure 8. It was a big, huge loop to the southwest, and then it came back up. And I think we rode on the same road just real briefly, and then we did another loop to the northeast. But there was a 7-mile climb with 2,000 feet of climbing that had like 23% pitches in it, and super loose rock, and not super loose rock, but some parts were super loose. Other parts really had rocks you're going over and stuff too, and just double track. Wasn't even a road at all. So that was great because I ended up 9th overall and 3rd in the 40 plus, but I also crashed on the big descent. So I was 4th fastest up the whole climb and 2nd fastest up the second half of the climb.
Wow.
But then on the descent, it was really rocky, and several people actually rode full suspension mountain bikes for the whole race just because of that descent. They had done the course before, and it was pretty rough. But I crashed hard, blew out my front wheel, and
Ouch.
crashed hard on my back. So I'm pretty sore still. I don't know if I broke a rib maybe or something, or cracked a rib, but it's pretty sore back there. And then some other tissue damage around the top of my pelvic bone and stuff too. But I got up and I rode another hour and a half or 2 hours after the crash, and like I said, finished 3rd still. There's a creek crossing where we probably went over, I'm guessing 60 feet or so of they called it a creek crossing, but it looked like a river to me.
Wow.
And it was up to my knees deep, and I went in the shallow part.
Wow.
So I had to shoulder my bike for that part, and yeah. So it was really a fun
and
race.
You said it was going to rain. Did it rain the whole race or not?
It did rain some off and on, a light misty kind of rain. I'd say only probably 25-30% of the time. The rest of it was not raining, but the course, it rained the night before, so the course was pretty wet. Not terrible, but there was a lot of big, huge potholes that were filled with water in the dirt parts. So you had to kind of dodge your way around these water holes and catch the driest, highest part of those, as you could. And it was 85% gravel. So it was some of it was fresh gravel, a lot of it was Jeep trails, some of it was hunting trails, hunting roads. It was a good race for sure. I just feel bad I crashed because I would have been right there in the mix of the hunt for first place in the 40 plus. The guy who won was 51, and the second place was 44. So I was still the first 60 plus person, but I think I would have been right there with those guys. My time wise, my finishing time, my riding time was the same as the first place's finishing time, just 6 seconds I think slower, 5 seconds slower. So it would have been nice to be able to kind of be in the hunt and be able to fight it out. Because actually, someone passed me in the hike bike section and through the water, that big water crossing at the end. I passed them, and I thought maybe they were in my race because there was races mixing together at that point. And then he got through the water faster than I did. I was being real ginger because my back was hurting pretty bad. And then I got back on, and he was fading, so I was able to pass him and beat him at the end. So adrenaline does crazy things to you, right? Even when you're hurt, you get out there and work hard. It was a good event. It was, in some people's first time race. There was everything down to a 22-mile race. Definitely local gravel races, still some, but not that many. Really getting smaller and smaller numbers. But so next up for me is going to be indoor racing, because now we're looking at like the Echelon Pro League and stuff like that coming up. Yeah.
Racing on a trainer.
Racing on a trainer.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not an indoor velodrome.
No. I did see that the ADT in LA velodrome is going to run a race series, though. It's geared more towards people that aren't big time track racers, just to get people after they've been certified on that track, because it's a 250 steep bank track. they can just come out and race. And I think it's every other week that's going to go on. So that's, if you're in the LA area, certainly you can get out there and do some track racing.
Excellent. All right. Well, for gravel racing, though, was it like remarkably different than other road racing you've done where there was the camaraderie and just kind of more relaxed atmosphere? I mean, did you stop anywhere for food or drink? I mean, how did you carry out? Did you, besides crashing and stopping then, did you stop any other time to get more sustenance?
Yeah, they did have 3 rest areas, and I only stopped at the final one after my crash. And I'd planned to stop at one of them. So I brought 2 big bottles, one with super fuel in it, and then it was relatively cool. It was in the 60s the whole time, so nice and warm at the beginning compared to, I guess, previous years. It was really cold and then warmed up, but it was in the 60s the whole time, and it was that light misty rain. So I went through 3 bottles, and I didn't really need anything to eat. So that the final rest stop, I just planned to grab a bottle. But apparently there was hot dogs there. I didn't realize that, but afterwards, people were talking about there were hot dogs at that 3rd rest stop. So it definitely is a different atmosphere in terms of that. Gravel is so different in different places because there's most places in the country wouldn't have the kind of descent that I crashed on. That was a pretty unusual descent from what I understand for racing around the country. Although, in my area here in Western North Carolina, that's oftentimes the kind of riding that we have. So I'm getting used to some of the more extreme gravel riding. But a lot of the races are more dirt roads and things like that, which most of the gravel around here is not that way. But it was pretty low key. I mean, it was very, very competitive at the front end, but we still chatted some when we were on the paved sections, those small ones we were on there. And at one point I was riding with a guy who was doing the 65 miler. And so we chatted quite a bit because we were slightly off the lead group and just kind of working together to try and limit our losses there. So, it's got a different atmosphere. Than afterwards, of course, people hung out. There was chili and cornbread and they had beer, but I had a Coke because I had to take a bunch of ibuprofen to reduce my swelling. I thought the Coke was probably a better option than the beer at that point. But they had showers, which is great because even we crossed that deep creek, there was
warm
still
showers.
Actually, it was lukewarm.
Lukewarm.
No, it was not bad. I mean, I was ready for a cold shower, and I needed one no matter what. But I took off my jersey and stuff too, and the other guys in the shower were like, "Oh my gosh, your back's really chewed up."
Oh, man.
I didn't realize I scraped it up that much, but apparently it's pretty scraped up too. So it was good to get that cleaned out with the shower. And my other wounds, I don't have a whole lot of road rash, but mostly bruising is the worst thing. But yeah, it was really well run and stuff too. Unfortunately, I had a 4.5 hour drive to come back to Asheville after the race, so it was kind of a long ways away, and you sit in the car all beat up and stuff. It's never all that fun.
Well, do you get to take a little break? I mean, your coach is going to give you a little time off now to heal up some. It's a kind of the time of year where other racers are maybe have a little break before they start their I guess it depends on what kind of season you're doing. I mean, if you're in cyclocross, obviously you're got a totally different training schedule. But if you're targeting maybe gravel and road for next year, you'd have a break and then start ramping up slowly with some long endurance rides, right?
Yeah, definitely. So some people have already started their long endurance rides to get ready for, if you're a pro, for example, racing in like March or something, you're already starting your base. And I've got some of my athletes who are gravel focused, but also cross focused, and so they're planning on racing really strongly through the first week of December when cross nationals are going to be in Connecticut again. And then so I was I'm going to Colorado Springs for some USA cycling meetings tomorrow, and so I was planning on taking a couple of days off anyway. And so basically this is turning into a off the bike week. Although you have to be careful because even though it's off the bike and I'm anxious to get on, I did ride a vote today, which was 2 miles, like 2.25 miles, I think. But it's not really. It's off the bike time for me, but I'm, still having to recover from this big crash. So, I need to make sure that I don't count this as being complete rest. Although my Whoop says I've been very much recovered. So my body isn't being a lot of energy for your body to recover from an injury. And so I'll take, this week off for sure. And then I have to kind of look and see because I'm going to start doing my e-bike racing, not e-bike racing, but my e-racing. E-racing, in December. So I won't be doing a ton of miles, but I'll be doing still some intensity. And that's one way too things have changed a little bit because it used to be that we would do no intensity during the first part of your year, the base training miles or your off season. And now I much less volume, but keep some intensity in too. And some people have said in the past even too that since the days are short and it's colder weather, maybe don't build up your big base until later in the spring if you have the luxury of doing that. If you're just targeting summer races, then maybe just keep some intensity in the colder, darker months, and then do the bigger base as you start getting.
Cyclocross is in full swing in Europe now, and I was surprised that it was already the European Championship weekend.
Yeah,
and
the Pan American. Yeah,
I guess they would coincide, right? Like each
theoretically
region would have their championship. So
theoretically, they try and make them similar, and I know that the UCI they sanction them, but each individual area gets to say when they want them to be. But yeah, ideally they'd be similar times. But sometimes too, like when you do the Tour de France in July and you've got all the national championships just before that, most of the national championships just before that, they try and do that so that you can have your new jerseys and stuff like that for the tour, and they try and keep them somewhat similar. But there is no rule again even for road. Like I think there have been some ones in South Asia and stuff like that even in the last month or so.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about, you've said before, how the track world championships, the world championships have shifted like completely at different times of the year before.
Oh yeah, it's been March traditionally, and then it's been we just had it last month, in October, and then now next year it'll be in August.
Crazy. Well, the Pan Am cyclocross championships, I didn't see, but you thought it was supposed to be in Costa Rica, but then they couldn't race there, and then they threw it onto the Rad Cycle Fest racing up there in Falmouth over the weekend. Is that
yeah, so it was awarded. I think it's Costa Rica, and I'm not sure what happened, but they could not hold it there. And so my guess is that this race, the Rad race, had already a UCI designation, perhaps, so it met all the rules of a UCI race, and so they were able to quickly get the approval to make that then the Pan Am Championships, because they like to spread it around. They don't want it to always be in America,
right.
So it's good to have it to cover the whole Pan Am region. But they'd rather have the race than not have it, and so the organizers apparently were willing to do what they had to do because I'm sure it was extra money, and they had to maybe make a few alterations and just do more things to get it to have the Pan Am Championship. So kudos to them for putting forth the extra effort so that the people in the Pan Am region would have a championship to race for.
Right. Well, I was trying to look on Cyclocross Magazine's website because I watched. I was watching the Sunday finish of the Rackley Rad. It was Cyclocross Series, the USCX Series, that was squashed in there with the Pan Am games. Anyway, Eric Bruner, he won all the races over the weekend, including the Pan Am Championship. And I was trying to see though what kind of participation they had from other countries outside of the U.S. and Canada that were already going to be racing. Probably in Massachusetts, right?
Yeah. A Canadian woman I know is second place. I think she's a former Pan Am winner too, but not a lot of south of the border athletes who are all eligible to race. But it's harder for people from poorer countries in Central America to come up and race anyway, and then to have to make a last minute adjustment, it makes it even harder for them too. So unless it was already on their schedule, I'm guessing that not many people other than Canadian and U.S. riders were going to be able to come.
Right. Well, the start list here just lists their names and their team, so it doesn't really list their country. But yeah, Eric Bruner's been on a tear.
Yeah.
Curtis White was leading on the last day, and Bruner's teammate Scotty Funston was up there with him. And I don't know, Eric seems to be the fastest, strongest, and maybe not as technical or drier conditions. Curtis White seems to still be better, maybe have more technical, wetter conditions. So it looked fairly dry, but Eric had to come back, and I think he got some help from Scott Funston, his teammate. He was trying to contain Curtis White, I guess, as much as you can, but Curtis was smart about doing that. But anyways, it was the two in the last lap, Eric Bruner and Curtis White, and Eric found a place a straightaway stretch where he could get ahead of him, and then he put on the gas a little bit and was able to hold off Curtis White to win there. So, but the announcers did say Curtis White is ranked 17th in the world, so that's pretty decent. So I know Eric's had some pretty good wins this year, but he's had some struggles in some races where I think he's pushed the gas pedal a little bit too hard and crashed, and has taken him out in some races just because of not going too hard when he should have eased up a little bit.
Yeah, that's actually a strategy we've talked to other athletes about. where there's and actually Curtis White, right? I mean, I think we talked to
Yeah, we've talked to both of them before, Eric and
yeah,
Curtis White. And it
but
seems funny. Curtis is now more like the elder statesman of the cyclocross. So he's
yeah.
27, so he is, and Eric's just 23. So
Yeah, Eric. I think though he said that Curtis said that he sometimes would ride when he's in Europe above his head to be with the leaders, in the early laps, just because then he gets to experience what it's like to be with Van der Haar or Isbert or even Mathieu van der Poel or Wout van Aert or something like that. So the best guys, so he can learn from them for those first couple laps, even if he's going over his limit and then has to
yeah,
drop off later
yeah,
on.
it goes
So
into the red, but it was worth it for that short time to
yeah,
get that experience, right?
yeah. So maybe he's not getting quite the same thing here, but now he's still putting forth that effort, saying that if I'm going to be competitive over in Europe, then he has to ride at that level, and so he's just trying to do that and extending that as long as he possibly can. And I think he is going to Europe, but he said I think he's waiting until after nationals in
Are
December
you
to go
talking
over.
about Curtis or Eric now?
Curtis, I think, right?
Yeah. Well, I hope Eric goes over there. He spent most of his time in the U.S. last year, didn't he? I think having the championships in early December kind of allows it a little bit more for the U.S. riders than to have that championship already past them, and then they can make the plans to go, especially in December after Christmas when there's lots of racing, and they can get more experience in racing in Europe for that last block.
Yeah, they don't have to go over and come back. So when we had our national championships in January, we tried to make it closer to Worlds so that people could peak for nationals and then Worlds, which is what most of the other European countries do and the other countries around the world do. But it also makes the traveling a little bit tougher because then people have to, go over maybe to Europe and then come back for nationals. And then, yeah. But of course, it's also too. I mean, now if they're going to peak for our nationals and they're 6 weeks before the European, but usually it's European-based World Championships, then
It's
that makes it a little hard
2
too.
months. If it's beginning of December, usually it's right at the very end or beginning of February, the World Championships. But
Yeah,
I
it's
think
pretty big gap.
Yeah, I think to win a U.S. national championship probably takes higher precedence over to get maybe even a top 15 world championship, right?
I think so. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So
You kind
depends on
of
their
ride within your own, I guess, in a way. But
well, it depends on your sponsorship too. But I'm guessing that almost no U.S. based rider is going to have sponsors that would prefer you to do better in Europe. If you happen to be an American on a European team, which occasionally we see that happening,
more women than men.
Yeah, then that might be a different story. But yeah, I think overall, plus the chances of winning a national championship are much higher if you're a man, especially than getting a top 15 in the worlds. For our women, I think definitely a top 10. We've got 2 or 3 women that could
Clara
do that.
Hunsinger's been consistently around 8th place, hasn't she, in these World Cups?
She's been riding strongly, yeah.
She did get 4th at the Koppenberg Cross, which I guess it's been 5 years. I was there in 2017, I think, and that's what behind me. You can see. Wout van Aert was the reigning world champion at that Koppenberg cyclocross race, but Mathieu van der Poel won that day, and Lars van der Haar was up there, but it was Lars van der Haar who made a big charge up that.
Oh man!
After
he crashed, he crashed on the last lap too, and the gap opened up. So yeah, it was an amazing finish by him for sure.
Yeah, he was the reigning European champion, but he relinquished that title over the weekend, and it was Michael Van Torenhout who he had passed at Koppenberg Cross, right?
Yeah.
Michael Van Torenhout had
a huge lead, like a 5 or 6 second lead going into the last climb, and he lost it all there. Yeah.
Yeah, but Van Torenhout had a great day on Sunday. I think probably that was bigger win for him to get the European Championship. So
yeah, I read that he said that was by far his biggest race. He's never won a jersey as an elite racer, and so he was super happy about that and said it was the biggest win of his career.
Yeah, on the women's side though, it's been pretty one-sided affair.
Oh Lord,
Finn Van Empel winning most every race. Like she won the Koppenberg Cross as well as the previous World Cups, and now she's the European champion. So she's been very, very dominant. And yeah, well, the Dutch have good riders both on the road and off road, don't they?
Oh, for sure, and the track too. They're
all the way around.
Especially the women riders. They are just the women's program there is unparalleled. For sure,
right?
And it has been for many, many years too.
Sure, and I think, well, I don't know. There's some crossover between the women speed skaters.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
To cyclists, so they've always had a strong speed skating program too.
Yeah, and the men somewhat so, but
Yeah,
not as
not
much as
as
women.
much.
So
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
I think just to the atmosphere, like they're saying in like what Slovenia or Slovakia, where the atmosphere is so much about outdoor living and sports, and everybody participates in sports and stuff too. And so that kind of culture in a country creates the opportunities for people to really excel then in different sports too, because you've got a lot of exposure to it, a lot of people participating, and there's so much speed skating and cycling and stuff going on in the Netherlands that you just have a bigger pool to draw from. And so, you don't have to have that one diamond in the rough you find and polish it up to be a super good person. You got a whole bag of them.
yeah, and being a country that's not so big, you can have all kinds of competitions and draw all the top athletes easily
Oh,
without
yeah.
much travel. I mean, the U.S. we struggle so much because just the size of our country. I mean, if you got really good racers up in the Pacific Northwest, it's going to be very difficult for them to come all the way east to race. I mean, there's just not the money for them to travel. But it's a big distance and much more difficult than be able to just pack everything up into a vehicle that you could drive an hour or two and be halfway across the country in the smaller European countries like the
Yeah.
Netherlands. So
Yes. And even in the Netherlands too, you can jump over to Belgium and do the races there, or northern France, or even go over to Poland. And so if you're a cross racer, you're really in the hotbed of cycling if you're in that area, and you can race, multiple times a week at really good quality competition. Where, yeah, like you said, here, if you're in the Northwest and you see races that are going on the East Coast, that's a really big commitment, because most cross racers aren't making a big living at cyclocross, and so to be able to afford to fly back and forth is out of the reach for most people.
yeah, and then just the support staff too, and the bikes that you need to bring is a bit much logistically more difficult if you're going to fly instead of drive. So
Yeah, especially for cross too, you usually need at least one backup bike plus some extra
lots of wheels.
wheels.
Yeah,
Yeah, because you don't know what the conditions are. So I'm guessing that almost everybody's still riding so-ups, so it's not just a matter of changing, a tubeless tire to a different type of course condition, but to actually glue a so-up, I mean, you have to have that done days in advance at least before you go to a race. So most of the cross racers will probably have, I would guess, at least 3 or 4 sets of wheels for different varying conditions, and that could change. If you think it's going to be a dry course, then all of a sudden they get an unexpected rain or something happens that changes things, then you have to have those extra wheels there, or else you could be at a severe disadvantage.
yeah, yeah. Well, we just, I mean, just do the best we can in the U.S. We have some areas where cyclocross is definitely more supported and that. But when I was looking back at the highlights back and forth between like the European Championships and then to the races that were going on in Falmouth, just it's just a night and day between even the courses. I mean, but to see so many fans and the attention to the Europeans and then the U.S. just I don't know. It's like it's like a neighborhood backyard event, really. It's
Yeah,
the way it looks. So yeah,
yeah, it's definitely a different environment. I mean, there is a lot of people that come out and watch cross races here, but a lot of times it's people that are racing other races that day, and they're just kind of hanging out, and but it's not like a spectator sport. It's like a participatory sport for sure. So you got all different levels of people doing things, and like I said, they'll hang out, and you'll get people lining finishes and stuff like that too. But you've been at the pits before in the Belgian races where said you couldn't move out of the pit because you would never get back up to the fence again to be able to see a spot where you could take pictures.
yeah. I was at places on the fence where I knew I'm going to be stuck here if I want to get any good shots because I can't get anywhere else close on the course. So I did move around a little bit at Koppenberg Cross. I was a little bit better because it's a midweek race, and so and that's just a fascinating race too because I wish I could go back in time and talk to Vanderpool and Van Aert about racing Koppenberg and if they had any in their mind ideas that one day they would be battling the Ronde van Vlaanderen. I mean, I guess they probably knew eventually they'd get to the road, but yeah, I mean to do that climb multiple times is pretty difficult. But we see pros can do so many things that it's really really a high level. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
I was thinking of Lachlan Morton doing that Everesting up that climb up the backside of Risk Canyon in Colorado. That I think maybe once or twice I did it twice in a row, but I mean he did it 30 times. I don't know. It's just unfathomable about how he could do that super tough ascent. Yeah. And
which Sean did
Sean Gardner.
Sean Gardner in Virginia, right? He was just north of me. He did that standing up almost the whole time. And so he said his shoulders were killing him. I can't imagine doing a climb similar to that too. Yeah, over and over and over again. Yeah, it's they're people at that level are certainly much different than their abilities than it is for the average person.
Oh yeah, super high. So the big thing though, cyclocross, we see Elie Iserbyt, Michael van Torenhout, Lars van der Haar all kind of battling out this year now. I mean, Elie Iserbyt was dominating the first few rounds of the World Cups, but he's had some other like crashes or mechanical problems that put him back. But it's really interesting maybe to see what happens when Tom Pidcock and then Mathieu van der Poel and Van Aert jump into the mix and see how it plays out then, if those three will dominate for the short time that they race or not.
Yeah, and we see that we were saying that we both saw the announcement that I think all three of us are supposed to be racing together at the end of November. So that'll be a very tightly watched race because they're such dominant riders, all three of them. If they would if any of them would enter any race by themselves, they would be the clear out favorite to ride away from it. But to have all three of them together, it's just a matter of someone making a mistake or having a bad day or what's going to happen. But it's going to be an exciting race no matter what.
Yeah, it seems like it's been not that many years, but I for a long time they were really just cyclocross races that once in a while during the summer you say, oh, they won a road race, and you wouldn't really follow them racing on the road some. Although, like, I think Mathieu van der Poel won the Dutch Road Championships before he was really committed to doing a big road campaign. But now it's hard to, in my mind, to think of them really as cross racers anymore because they've excelled and achieved so much already on the road.
And their cross season is truncated now too. They don't do a full cross season, which we saw that a little before they were fully focused on the road, depending upon either injuries or the way they were structuring their season to peak at different times. But yeah, now they need a little bit of a break from the road, and then they also want to get ready for road after this too, because that's even as popular as cyclocross is in that part of the world, they're still getting most of their paycheck from riding on the road, so that they have to kind of limit how many races they'll do. I think who was it? Mathieu van der Poel maybe said he was doing 10 races or something like that this year for cross, which might seem like a lot, but you could do 10 races in 4 or 5 weeks in cross between a midweek race and 2 on the weekend. So it doesn't take very long to add up the races.
Right. Well, I think all three of those big riders now, when they race cross, they're racing in their road team. I mean, they have allowances for them to race. Pauline for.
Yeah, Prevot,
who's racing for Ineos now, and so she
raced the European Championships, and she said she was just not in shape to be able to win at that level. But yet she just was winning mountain bike world championships a short time ago. But yeah, she it took some time off.
Right. Well, I think Clara Hunsinger, did I mention, she's, like we said, she's been up there in the top 10. So she was the fourth place at Koppenberg Cross, and she had won last year. So. That's our biggest European hope for.
Yeah, she's occasionally we get another woman who's doing well there for sure. So we have strong women, but she is definitely the most consistent. And you'd hope, I always think, our standard bearer really is still Katie Compton in terms of someone who did well for so many years in a row and stuff, and was, she won the World Cup. She never won World Championships, but she's on the podium multiple times. And so you got to think, well, how is Katie racing? And how is someone like Clara racing now too? And to see how she might be able to do at either the World Cup or the World Championships, you kind of have to do as well as Katie Compton was to really have a shot at winning a World Championship. And Clara's not quite there yet, but she's still young. How old is she? Is she 25 now, maybe?
Good question.
Look and see.
Yeah.
But if she's probably, she's at this point where she's being more consistent at that world level, and she's racing over in Europe consistently, and that's what you really have to do if you want to be one of the world's best. And so I think that she's still on her way up and has a chance to maybe be in the World Cup hunt, and maybe even with the right course be in the World Championship hunt.
Right. Well, it's going to be pretty difficult anyone to get past Fem Van Empel right now, it looks like. But
right now, but you never know, right? So Puck was racing well earlier too, and so it's just, yeah, you never know. And then someone like Chantal Black comes back and maybe out of nowhere, right? There's people that. Yeah, it crosses a fickle sport, right? We've seen Iserbyt dominating early in the season before, and then not being able to hold that through the whole year. And yeah, so definitely Fem feel like she's just unbelievably strong right now. We'll have to see.
But it's a long enough season, yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right.
I know.
there wasn't much going on the road, but it totally wasn't. Isn't I mean, it never really ends because there's always races in different parts of the world that we don't necessarily follow as much. Like in Guatemala, there's a stage race, and now in looks like Morocco we have a race. But there was one more criterium. Did you see the criterium? The Saitama? What's that?
Yeah, was it Jasper Philipsen who won that? Was it?
Yep, Jasper Philipsen.
Yeah.
He was away with Jonas Vingegaard. I was watching like towards the finish. Like, how do they like coordinate who's gonna say they're gonna attack?
Well, usually the yellow jersey will always win, and so for Philipsen to win over Vingegaard, it's a surprise.
Yeah, well.
Right?
Excuse me too.
We both had a cough over that one.
Yeah. It's fun for them, and they get to see a different part of the world and lots of fans. And
well, even the Vel News article before this one said Vingegaard crosses the line first. It didn't say he won the race. Not this one here, but the one before this one. So it's like not even. I mean, they're racing for sure, but are they racing to win or racing for a show?
Yeah. For sure. But Mark Cavendish was there. Vincenzo Nibali, he's been at those races. I think Alejandro Valverde might even been there, right?
Okay. You kind of the swan song of their careers, right? To go around and get all that adulation one more time while they're still able to race at that level, and then after this they'll be still fast, but not quite as fast as if they're still racing the World Tour.
Right. Well. Yeah, I don't think there's much to talk about because I mean we didn't on the road scene because we wanted to talk more about the tour route, but I never went back to examine it more closely.
I have looked a little bit too. So the Q36.5 Pro Cycling Team, that's the team that used to be Quebeca basically. So
Doug Ryder's team.
Yeah, Doug Ryder's team.
Yeah, I've seen. Yeah, so I've seen it. Yeah, he's got a roster and
they signed 2 Americans. So Joey Roscoe.
Oh, he did?
Yep. Signed for them. Yeah. And then Corey Davis also, too.
Oh, really? Corey Davis.
Yeah. So, but Joey, though, we were a little surprised because Human Powered Health didn't submit the paperwork in the initial period for UCI teams, but my understanding is that they will or have already submitted it for the second deadline. So they're still going to exist, and they, are basically they're a U.S. registered team, but they do race out of Europe a lot, too. But the new Q36.5 team is going to be probably based out of Europe, right? So he's not certainly not he's ready to retire or anything too, but he's getting towards the end of his career probably. But he's looking to get on this team that's not going to be invited to every race because it's not a World Tour team, but they definitely will be at a lot of the big races and probably like the same level of what Human Powered Health was last year. So Joey's still putting his wheels down and is really, but it's got people like Jack Bauer's on the team too, and Brambilla on the team, and he's got some some other guys too. So Filippo Colombo, he's a Swiss rider too. So I said people that are a wide variety of people that are going to be on that team. But Damon Howson's on the team. It's definitely some mixture of newer and more experienced riders that will be able to get in the mix for races for sure.
And we still don't know what's happening with B&B Hotels, right? There's been a lot of question marks, and about Mark Cavendish as well, who is linked to be joining that team and give him a shot to break Eddie Merckx's Grand Tour stage victories at the Tour de France stage victories.
Yeah, so they say at this point that not to worry. The deadline for the paperwork I think comes before the bank guarantee deadline, but that's they said that they'll be submitting things before the deadline and everything will be fine, but sometimes teams will say that even when they're desperately searching for some last money or something like that too. So we're not sure, but yeah, I mean we don't know because even like someone like Nairo Quintana, who's definitely not going to be on Arcadia Samsic, but he says
they're not going to have his position at this year's tour either. I saw that.
No. But he says that he is locked in for a new team next year, but he isn't announcing it yet too. So it's kind of like, well, where is he going if he can't announce it yet? And so there's still kind of some of that. We're not sure about a lot of situations in terms of where a few riders are going.
Right. Well, I missed. We wanted to mention we were talking about the gravel racing and that this past weekend was also Iceman Cometh up there in the Traverse City area.
Yeah.
And Alexei Vermeulen, who's had a fantastic year, second in the Lifetime Series, Belgian Waffle race winner in San Diego and Michigan took the win again. He's won at least once before, I know, Iceman Cometh. But it seems like it's a shorter time, or it's gotten to be a little bit different race than it used to be. And I don't think it's been very icy for a while either up there in northern Michigan.
I think it was a relatively warm day. He was in shorts and short sleeves, although the crowd looked like they were wearing some heavier stuff for sure. But I think a lot of the country had some warm weather this past weekend, including northern Michigan. So it wasn't a real Iceman race. And that race can be everything from, a couple feet of snow to balmy temperatures. But he did say they had to do a lot of course repair. There was a lot of damage apparently to the sand sections of the course, and they had to do some last day's course repair this last week before the race started. And he said that saved the course. So I'm not sure what kind of bad weather they might have had that damaged the course, but there's always an element when you get this time of year to the weather.
Right. Well, that's a nice event up there. So they've got some pretty good racing up in northern Michigan. Wasn't the Belgian Raffle up that area too?
Yeah.
So and that's area where Larry Warbass comes from. We saw that he re-signed, didn't he, for another year or two with AG2R?
I think we did. Yeah, I see he's been riding a lot of miles lately on just his Strava, so it makes it look like he's not backing off anytime soon. And I think he signed just for one more year, right? Was it one more year? We'll look it up and see.
Yeah, I thought it was 2, but maybe it's one more year. Oh yeah, now I see Doug Ryder's new Q36.5 team. So, 23-man squad. More news you said.
23 it says right now for Larry Warbass. So signed through 23.
23. That's next year. Okay.
Yeah, he's 32 years old. And birthplace, you're right on Traverse City.
Traverse City, right. So we'd like to talk to our Michigan guys if we can once in a while. And Alexei's been very gracious almost every year that we talk to him, sometime late in the year, November-ish. So I need to make a note to try to get a hold of him.
Yeah,
because he's had such an amazing year this year. And a YouTube video just came out about kind of like his transition, though, from the dream of racing in the Tour de France. I mean, he made it to the World Tour level. He was 5th in the Dauphiné in a stage when he was riding for Jumbo-Visma. But they kind of went a little different direction. Kind of shocked him, and he made some changes, and now he's doing gravel racing mostly and doing it very well.
Yeah, he's definitely changed. He's on a team that allows riders, jukebox that lets people do whatever they want to, either mountain bike or gravel or even occasional road races. So he's got quite a bit of flexibility, and I think he actually can have some of his own sponsors as well as jukebox too. So as a racer, it's not as much support as you would get on certainly World Tour team or something like that, but he does have flexibility to kind of tailor his own schedule to do the kind of races he wants to do, and also then to have individual sponsors along with his team sponsors.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think, Geraint Thomas, you saw he's going to go to the Giro. He's already won the Tour. Well, why go back?
Well, yeah, he's of course a really strong time trialist even now, and so he was disappointed that there wasn't more time trialing in the Tour next year, and so and I think that might be a Remco Evenepoel's choice too. We're not sure yet; it hasn't been announced, but it could be a pretty good battle there for the top spot in the Giro from a lot of the big names.
Yeah, and of course Remco's an incredible time trialist too, so that does fit him. Egan Bernal, did I see something that he was going to try to come out really strong early in the year next year? Did you see that?
I didn't see that, but I did see that he was targeting the Tour, though. So I think he probably has to establish himself within the Ineos confidence situation, though, too, because they're a big, strong team that has lots of options, although fewer and fewer in these days in terms of who could lead at the Tour de France. But still, I think that if they're going to be all in for him in the Tour de France, they need to kind of get confidence that he's going to be there in July. And so by having a strong early season, I could see that playing into that for sure.
Wow. I just saw Jay Vines leaving Alpecin-Deceuninck to sign for UAE Team Emirates, which they've got so many good riders. Someone like Jay Vine who could do really well. You got to fly there?
Marshall's nudging me here. I'm trying
to get you're trying to swat at a fly there. Marshall.
Because it's time change. It'd be 6:10 instead of 5:10, which is his walk time. So he doesn't realize we changed our clock. So he's like, "Come on, Dad, let's go for our walk." But at least he's being quiet about it.
Yeah. I don't know if you heard Maui barking in the background, but that was probably a delivery. That's when he goes the most crazy, when someone walks right up to the front door. And instead of just going by running, cycling, loud car, motorcycle, or the mail truck.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, UAE Emirates just gets stronger and stronger. So I don't know, Jay Vine, did he win 2 stages at the Giro?
Yeah, 2 stages, and he still was under contract for another year.
Yeah, right.
So he had to break that contract. So it must have been.
They must have a lot of money at UAE still, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, what is their payroll? I mean, and then Jumbo Visma, they got Dylan Van Baarle to sign with him when he could have stayed with Ineos, which is a lot of money. UAE was after him.
Yeah.
But Jumbo, I mean, it's kind of like the home team, I guess.
And also too, I think he felt like that was the place that he would be most at home and be able to thrive the most. So
he had
he
more chance with the classics, right?
So he's and he has good support too. So and with the classics, I mean, you want to be a team that has
multiple options,
right? 2 or 3 options, but also not a team that's so flooded with options that, like, sometimes Ducanic has 6 guys, right, who could win a race, and the best guy might be in the second group or first group or someone else, and there's so many people a chance to win, you don't get that chance. But on a team like Jumbo, they work a lot towards their leader and then have backups a little bit more than, like, other teams that have let whoever is riding the best win. So I think it's a good move for him for sure. But it sounded like it was very intentional. They do have a lot of money, but maybe not as much as someone like Ineos or UAE, like we said. So he's probably maybe taking a little bit less money, but then he gets to race maybe a little bit more of what he wants to race.
Right, and he's right there at home. In the Netherlands, yeah.
Right. So yeah, and with Jay Vine too, I heard that they were saying they want to check on his possibility of being a multi-day race leader. So maybe they promised him the chance to develop in that pathway in some way, because like you said, they're overloaded with such good riders. But they maybe said, hey, here's 3 week-long stage races that will allow you the opportunity to be a leader or something like that, and that might have been the difference in getting him to go over there and break the contract.
Where does that leave Brandon McNulty? I mean, he's our big
I think
hope there that he's.
Yeah. I think his opportunities are going to be less designated and more opportunistic. So I was reading something earlier that said that they still think that he could do well in the shorter stage races, but they really liked the way he rode this last year in support at, was it the Giro? Was that it?
No, at the Tour.
The Tour, yeah.
Yeah, he was leading Taddy up and dropping everybody else that one day. Yeah.
So I think that they're kind of targeting a little bit more towards that as his role, and maybe he's comfortable with that too. He's just a good time trialist. You think that maybe he'd want to at least have the opportunity at some smaller races to do well.
Right. But hopefully he's earning a nice paycheck too there at UAE. Got enough money to go around for all the riders. So, well, I guess I didn't think we had so much road news to talk about, but it's easy to come up with, isn't it? That's still the marquee sport of cycling, as far as cycling fans overall recognize.
I'm a little interested to see, like, Dan Martin's got a new book out, so he was always an interesting perspective on things. Of course, he was cousins with Nico Roche and nephew of Stephen Roche. Yeah. Right. So he's a different perspective on cycling. In Ireland, it's huge cycling, but not as big as it is like in Belgium, obviously, or even France. So it's interesting to see someone who reached the highest level when you don't have quite the emphasis on it, that they do in some other countries too. So I'm interested to see that a little bit, what he's got to say in there.
Yeah. So off-season road time is time when they come up with their books or get married.
Yeah.
If they can time it well to have children too, but
well, yeah. So Lizzie Dykman is going to be back racing, I think, again next year, right? So that was her deal, to get the year off, and then I think she's definitely planning to come back. So
yeah. All right. Well, do you have anything else? Can we go to birthdays? Or you got?
I was just looking real quick to see. So Lizzie, she signed through 2024. And I know that when she re-signed, she consulted with the team and stuff too, and was saying that she was planning to have another child and come back to race. So, that's great. I think it's fantastic that she's able to do that. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I don't think anything else. So.
That's because I got my ballot ready, but I have to run it down to the drop-off place. So.
Okay. I voted earlier today. So yeah.
Jan Ross.
Yeah.
Jan Ross,
wow.
top of the list. Dutchman,
Legend.
70 years old.
Yeah.
Wow.
5 times Amstel Gold Race winner.
That's amazing. It's he won in the late 70s and early 80s. He's won 10 stages at the Tour de France, but probably the biggest wins maybe would be 2-time Ronde van Vlaanderen winner, 2 times Tour of Flanders. So.
Yep, and also 2 times Paris Tours too, and World Championship Road Race in '79. Milan San Remo, Paris-Roubaix, got Velvegun. Yes, he's definitely one of the true legends of the sport.
If you look at the career points, over 13,000 Pro Cycling Stats points, which is over 10,000 more than who's the second rider.
But he only raced for 11 years as a pro too. He was only 1975 to 1985, so he didn't have a super long career as some people did, but wow, what a spectacular! Yes, exactly. Yep.
All right. Well, the next rider, the number 2 rider for points, which we said like 10,000 less points, was still pretty impressive. Palmares, Wilmo Francione, Italian, because he won 3 stages of the Giro.
Yeah,
back in the 70s, was second at Milan San Remo.
Whew.
And won twice the Trofeo Matteo Totti.
Yeah, second in 2 different stages of the Tour de France too. So, and a quality rider for sure. Second place 4 times in the Giro d'Italia. He's 10th place GC in the Giro. So, but it says though he was more of a one-day racer, sprinter kind of guy, which makes sense. Then he's not going to have won, like some of the big Grand Tour races, but he'd still be able to do well in some of the stages.
Right. Well, caught my eye down the list there is Gregory Daniel.
Oh yeah, I saw his birthday today. Actually, wished him
28.
Wished him happy birthday. Yeah, he's
former
blind.
U.S.
Blind in one
champion.
Blind in one eye, right? So
yeah.
His career was not long lived after he won his national championship. So he raced only till 2019. And what day did he win the national championship? 2016. Early, so he raced a couple of years after that. Yeah. So when he's racing for Action Higgins Berman.
Right, and then he went on to Trek Segafredo. So.
Yeah, for a couple of years, but yeah. So but yeah, I mean, I don't think he was completely blind, but legally blind in one eye, I think so.
Yeah, he's a good guy for sure. I think you could go back and find an interview with him back in the day too.
Yeah, that was one of the early ones, I think, right?
Andrew Bosco's birthday today, 34. Happy birthday, Andrew. It is. Oh, we didn't ever say what the day it is today. I would look at my calendar, but I've got still December 2021 hanging up.
November 8th.
So November 8th. Yeah, it's Election Day. Election Day in the United States. And November 8th, 2022, episode 307, I think we decided it was.
Yep.
So yeah, we missed last week. I don't know what happened, but the weeks go by. You were getting ready to go to Virginia, and I was working my trips. Anyway, Sandy Perrin's birthday today. Happy birthday, Sandy, 48 today. Emma Bast is 36. So I think that covers it for the U.S. riders that have. Oh, David McComas, 53. David McComas.
And Jessica Goff, too.
A couple more riders who have raced UCI race. I guess that's you don't have to get any points, I don't think, to get on the list. But if you raced a UCI race, you're in there. It seems.
Yeah, I don't even see the other races. The races you said between Greg Daniel and David McCombs. I don't see him on my list. David, McCombs.
Down at the bottom, I got Emma Bast was 91st on the list, and Sandy Perrin's 96. I got 100 riders.
On my list, it's Emma Swinscott from 91st. Yeah. I wonder why we have different lists. But we have David McCombs in the same list, though, too, and Jeff Goff. That's weird.
Today's the 8th, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we both had Jan Ross in the front, so so.
I've got mine on my mobile device, so.
Oh, maybe
that matters.
I don't know. Yeah.
Huh. All right. Well, no big deal. Happy birthday if it's your birthday today, and you listen to this Warren Cycling podcast. We do appreciate you listening to. We just talk about whatever cycling that's going on and in the news. We follow racing, but you go out and do the racing, and you train racers, and you're going to Colorado Springs to the USA Cycling headquarters. So
Yeah, we
You,
have coaching summit on. So your son Taylor's going to be there for his level one clinic, which starts tomorrow, and then there's coaching summit meetings on Thursday, Friday, and then we've got a junior meeting on Saturday morning.
right. So you've got more more info. You've got the pulse on what's going on in the U.S. for racing, right?
Somewhat
More or
so,
less.
yeah. And then I've actually been talking to Brendan Quirk too, our CEO of USA Cycling too, about some organizational issues and that kind of stuff too. So there's all sorts of stuff going on for sure. You know that most racers don't have any idea, and a lot of them care and a lot of them are critical of organizations who are running cycling. But there's a lot that goes on for sure, and it all affects us in lots of ways.
All right. Well, always great to talk to you about what's going on, and we'll try to talk again soon.
All right, thanks,
All
Dean.
right. Thanks, Randy. Bye.
Bye now.